Welcome back to the Nerdy Grail and welcome to the 11th video in this ranking every episode from every Doctor's series. Now, we are at the tail end of the era now that transformed the show from black and white into colour. That's right, we have made it to the early 1970s, and in this video I will be ranking every third Doctor story played by the amazing Jon Pertwee. So in the last video I tackled the Tom Baker era, so I'll put a link to that video down in the description below for you to check that video out. And on my channel I have done every Doctor so far. I've done them in reverse order in a tier list format, where I started with Ncuti, and then obviously last time I did Tom, and now, if you can see the box sets behind me, and like I've just said, we'll be tackling the third Doctor, played by Jon Pertwee, who was a fantastic Doctor, who was the Doctor for 5 great years, did 5 amazing seasons, and we've only got one more season left to come out on the collection range, and that's his final season, season 11. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into this list, whereby I will be giving my own personal ranking of every single third Doctor story. Okay then, here we are with my tier list ranking every third Doctor episode, from Spearhead from Space all the way down to Planet of the Spiders. 24 stories in total to rank for the third Doctor. We've got our 5 categories here again, so top of the shop, so best of the best. Courage isn't just a matter of not being frightened, you know. It's being afraid and doing what you have to do anyway. That's like my favourite quote from the third Doctor, from Planet of the Daleks. You've got then a tier, Sarah Jane, no, don't cry, while there's life, there's... is obviously last words that he said before, you know, the regeneration in Planet of the Spiders. And these are the stories that I think are great. Then we've got a straight line, maybe the shortest distance between 2 points, but it is by no means the most interesting. So these are the stories that are okay. So they're not great, but they're not bad. They're just your middle-of-the-road stories. Then we've got It's Rather a Pity in a Way. Now the universe is down to 699 wonders. So these are the stories that are bad, not terrible, but they're just not the best. And then bottom of the barrel, terrible stories, at least in my opinion. We've got When I Meet a Regime that needs to import savage alien life forms as security guards, I begin to wonder who the real criminals are. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into, well, the first series, starting with Spearhead from Space. And straight away, for me anyway, I think Spearhead from Space has to go top of the shop. Out of the 2 Auton stories, so you're going to get a bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain now before we even get to it, Spearhead from Space is actually my favourite of the 2 Auton stories. Only because I feel like in this one, the Autons are creepier. Now, don't get me wrong, the Autons in Terror, the Autons are terrifying as well. But I don't know, there's just a bit more of an uncanny movement to the Autons in Spearhead from Space that really unnerves me. The movements, you know, the way they can move and they run. You know, I just think it is terrifying. But it's a fantastic first story to the third Doctor. He spends the first episode and a bit in a hospital bed trying to get out of hospital. And, you know, he's got that post-regeneration amnesia and trauma happening. He's very funny. You get the sense that Jon Pertwee is going to be this more, you know, action-y Doctor from the get-go when he's trying to escape from the hospital in a wheelchair and he gets taken out. It's like, there's lots. He steals a car, which is basically the prototype for Bessie. You know, his connection with the Brigadier, the introduction of Liz. Obviously, when the Doctor was exiled to Earth, they decided, you know, they need a familiar character. So Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, Nicholas Courtney, is in all of these stories, and he's fantastic and bounces off the third Doctor really well. It's really fast-paced in a good way, so you never feel bored and you're always on the edge of your seat. I think Terror of the Autons is really, really good, and it was the first classic Doctor Who story to get the Blu-ray treatment as well. So I was really glad when it came out as well on the collection range. I do have the individual Blu-ray still of this story as well, but Spearhead from Space is fantastic. Then we got Doctor Who and the Silurians. Doctor Who and the Silurians, for me, I think it's a good story. It's definitely not as good as Spearhead from Space. I think the design of the Silurians is at its best in this story. They're not too bad in Warriors of the Deep, but there's something about this one I think is better. Looks a little bit more prehistoric, and it has that alien feel a lot more to it. And then when you get to New Who and they've changed the design a little bit, I know there's reasonings behind the change in the design and all, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. I personally prefer how they look here. I think they're really, really good. It's really, really good. Basic premise of, the Silurians were the inhabitants of Earth long before humans. They don't like what humanity has done to the planet. They feel that they have the right to the planet, and so they want to try and take out all the humans so that they can have the land back, basically. It's very dramatic at the end because the Brigadier and unit basically bomb the surviving Silurians, which you'd think that would cause everlasting tension with the Doctor, but it surprisingly doesn't. But I love the speeches that the Doctor gives. I love the cave setting as well. I'd say the only nitpick I have about this story, which doesn't put it top of the shop, is it's a 7-parter, and I think that is a tiny bit too long, and there is times where this story does feel like it drags. So if I'm being honest, I think you could have, cut it down. I think it could have done to just being a 4-parter, if I'm honest. 6 maybe at a real push, definitely not a 7-parter. This one, unfortunately, I'm not a fan of Ambassadors of Death. It's going down here. Now, some people may be like, what on earth are you talking about? Ambassadors of Death is amazing. How can you hate Ambassadors of Death? It just doesn't click to me. Like, interesting concept. You've got this space exploration. These astronauts have gone up into space. But when they come back down, something has gone wrong. They're not really the people who left in the capsule. They're oozing radiation, and they need to figure out what's going on. And it turns out that actually they've been kidnapped by aliens, and the real ambassadors are being held by the aliens, and they have to do a bit of a swapsy at the end. But the problem is, everything about this story just feels rushed, feels like they didn't have enough content to work with, because the amount of times, for example, Liz gets captured and escapes in the middle of this story is so repetitive and boring that I just get switched off. The ending of this story is very abrupt as well. The Doctor supposedly gets the astronauts back down, send them into space, whatever. Just says, don't worry, they'll all be fine. And he just walks away, and that's just how the story ends. And I'm like, what? Well, I got questions here, and again, it's another 7-parter, and I just think this definitely should have only been a 4-part story. There was not enough content here to work with to make it a 7-parter, if I'm being honest. So just for me, it's a bit boring. I'm not a huge fan of, and the side characters aren't that interesting. The design of the ambassadors are okay, but it's a bit generic. Inferno is also going top of the shop. Inferno is a fantastic story. Traveling to a parallel universe, I think, is really good, and they don't do it enough in Doctor Who. For a show that's all about space and time, come on, parallel universe stories, they should be happening a lot more frequently than they do. It is fantastic. The Doctor works on this drilling site with UNIT to observe an experiment, which in the end is trying to drill into the core of the planet. And something goes wrong. They sort of disturb something at the core of the planet, and if you touch this oozy substance, it starts to transform you into this primeval state where you're out of control and you're covered in fur. It mutates you basically, and if they drill too deep, they'll disrupt the core of the planet, and lava will go everywhere. It'll destroy the world. The Doctor ends up travelling to a parallel dimension while trying to fix the TARDIS, using the energy from the power plant to do so. Really funny seeing the TARDIS console just standing in a shed. He travels to a parallel world where they're a little bit further ahead in the experiment, so he gets to see the results beforehand, and he tries to stop it. But I love the duplications of the Brigadier, of Liz, of Benton. I think the brigade leader is hilarious. I think it's done really, really well. And for a 7-parter, this one actually doesn't feel too long for me. This one feels like it's warranted. And it's the season finale as well, so you've got to make it big, if I'm honest. So I love it. Although, considering this is the last time we see Liz, I think her departure, even though it wasn't a departure, is sort of just abrupt. He just walks away after having a normal conversation with her, because obviously it was a bit up in arms. Was she going to come back or not? But unfortunately, that was the end for Liz. So the Liz season overall is a bit of a mixed bag, but I quite like Inferno. Terror of the Autons is going next to the Silurians, because even though I don't like it as much as Spirit from Space, I can still agree, in my opinion anyway, that Terror of the Autons is still a great story of Doctor Who and a fantastic Jon Pertwee story. The Autons are still creepy. I love the new ways that the Autons are using to attack people and threaten people, you know, using like telephone wires, using like inflatable chairs to crush people, using the daffodils, you know, the costumes that the Autons wear. The introduction of Roger Delgado as the Master, who, this is now season 8, which is almost like delegated as the Master season, because the Master is in every episode in this series, is really, really well. So it gives the Doctor a bit of a Moriarty to his Sherlock, so they bounce off each other really well. This is the introduction of Katie Manning as Jo Grant, and she's really, really good and on top form. I love it, really. It is a good story. I just think the Autons, in my opinion, are better in Spearhead, because obviously the Master takes a bit more of a lead role in this than the Autons. That tends to be the case for a lot of Master stories. Like when he teams up with Daleks or Cybermen, you tend to find that the Cybermen or the Daleks get like the back foot to the Master, and that sort of happens here in this story. Mind of Evil, I also really, really like. Originally, when I first watched it, years and years ago, I would have said Mind of Evil would be like middle of the road or down where Bastards of Death is. But in recent years, and rewatching it on the Blu-ray box set, I've grown to really like Mind of Evil, and I think it is a solid story of Doctor Who. You know, a story where even the Master, I mean, this happens a lot nowadays, but where even the Master, especially Roger Delgado's incarnation, he can't control the creation and the threat that he's brought to the Doctor. Even he loses control of this big machine, this, I think they call it the Keller machine, I can't quite remember now, but you know, a machine that like infects the minds. It's all set in like a prison, and it infects the minds of people, drives them mad, uses their fears against them, you know, through hallucinations and stuff like that. It's really interesting. The machine can teleport around. It's a really interesting concept and a good story. And I love that one of the Master's fears is basically the Doctor mocking him. You know the scene I'm on about, where this giant Doctor is like laughing at the Master, and the Master's like saying, "Stop it, stop it." You know, I love it. It is a good story. 6-parter, you know, did it need to be 6? I don't know. There's times where I've watched it and I thought it could have been shorter, but there's also times where I think, nah, I think that's about right, really. Claws of Axos. This might upset some people, I'm not sure. I mean, Claws of Axos was one of the first Jon Pertwees I watched. Not the first, that goes to the Spearhead from Space. But Claws of Axos was like within the first 3 or 4 stories I've watched of Jon Pertwee. For me, it's very middle of the ground. I know some people really like Claws of Axos. I do know some people that don't like it at all, but for me, it's about middle tier. I like the Axons. I like the design. The golden look, humanoid look looks brilliant. I love the Axon monsters with all their tentacles and stuff. I like that the Master tries to team up with UNIT towards the end and try to convince the Doctor about, you know, being on the same side. That happens a lot in the Jon Pertwee era. It happens again in probably the next story we're going to talk about. But yeah, it's all right. And I like the way the Doctor acts to everyone. He's just so done at this point because he just wants to get off the planet. But yeah, it's an okay story, if I'm honest. It's just okay. Middle of the road. Nothing spectacular, but nothing terrible either. Colony in Space is going down here alongside Ambassadors of Death. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people are really surprised. It's also a shame because this is the first time in the Jon Pertwee era that he's been allowed off-world to go to where the whole story, takes place on a different planet to Earth. You know, he's sent on a quest. Jo tags along, so she gets to finally see, the TARDIS properly and also get to be on another planet. You know, the Master is in it, because I should say the Master's in all of these stories. But the Master doesn't come into it until, I believe, part 4, you know, and he comes as like this adjudicator that's trying to solve a dispute on the planet. There's some brilliant speeches in this story, don't get me wrong, between the Doctor and the Master at the end, where the Master's trying to convince the Doctor to team up with him, join him, explore the universe. You know, the universe could be ours. Love all that. Brilliant. You know, because they had that plot line originally where potentially the Doctor and the Master could have been brothers. You really get that feel in this story. I just think that the pacing was off. The setting is your generic classic Who quarry. I can't really complain about that. But when the majority of the story takes place like that, it's not the best. The creatures and alien species, very boring and generic. The side characters aren't memorable. You know, I tend to maybe skip this one when it comes to it, if I'm honest. Not a huge fan of Colony. The Demons, another maybe unpopular opinion for some people, but I also think the Demons, or Daemons, however you want to say it, I think it's mid as well, like Claws of Axos. you know, what can I say? It's a 5-parter. I love the little gargoyle. The little gargoyle creature. I want to say his name's like Bok, I believe. He's really, really cool, interesting design. It all takes place in this village, which is then surrounded by this this barrier that no one can pass. The master's basically trying to summon the powers of this creature known as Azal, who's like a demon, almost like you want to call him like Satan to a degree. He's not quite like that, but he's sort of, you could classify him in the same area as that, and trying to use his power. It's all right. It's an all right story. Just, again, not an awful lot feels to happen. And if I'm being honest, when I first watched it, I'd probably say it'd be more the category above. But in recent watches, not as much for me. Day of the Daleks. Now, the Jon Pertwee had 3 Dalek stories in particular, and they're all going to be in different categories. They're not going to be in the same category. Day of the Daleks for me is mid. I think it's a mid story. I know some people might also say it's bad. Some people might say it's better. Look, Day of the Daleks is an alright story. The reason I put it as mid, because I am eventually going to do this in a video, is if I'm sitting down to watch Day of the Daleks, you want to watch a Dalek story for the Daleks. And if I'm honest, the Daleks don't really do an awful lot in this story. So as a Dalek story, it's not really the best. As a story, I think it's middle of the road. Time travel. Some people are planning to come back to interrupt this peace conference because something goes wrong and it affects the future. So it's a bit like Terminator, so to speak. Let's change the past to change our future so that we're not enslaved by the Ogrons and the Daleks, that sort of thing. Because the Daleks have conquered this planet in the future, and the slaves that work there want to travel back in time to stop that from ever happening. And that's pretty much what happens in this story. I love some of the speeches. I love Jon Pertwee's interaction with the Daleks. Depending on the version of the story you watch, the Daleks will either sound amazing or they will sound ridiculous. If you watch the original version, they sound terrible, but that's because I believe that because obviously the Daleks were originally meant to leave the show after Evil of the Daleks, and then obviously they came back then 5 years later. They hadn't really figured out or found, the modulators and stuff that they used for the Daleks, so they had to try and replicate it, and it didn't really work out too well. However, if you watch then the special edition version on the DVD or on the Blu-ray box set, you will get Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks, who does the Daleks in the new series. So, I mean, I can watch it with the old Daleks as well. The old Dalek voices is fine because the charm of classic Who. But obviously, in comparison to the Nicholas Briggs voices, it does sound night and day difference. The Ogrons are also an interesting concept to have as a bit of the slaves of the company and of the Daleks. The Ogrons do come back again. I think they should have come back in New Who, to be honest, or at least at some point in classic Who. I think the fact they've only been in Jon Pertwee's era is a bit of an insult, to be honest. Obviously, Big Finish have done things with the Ogrons, but we're talking about on-screen here. But yeah, it's an okay story. This might be an unpopular one because I know a lot of people, for some reason, really hate the Peladon stories. But if I'm being honest, I really like the Peladon stories. Curse of Peladon, for me, I think is actually great. Is actually a really good story. I love the Ice Warriors. That could be a little bit of a bias for me, but if you know me, you know the Ice Warriors are my favourite villains in Doctor Who. But I like here is that the Ice Warriors are not actually the villains in this one. They're actually the good guys, and the Doctor actually has to get over his prejudice of thinking that the Ice Warriors are the villains in order to try and solve a mystery that's going on. The Doctor and Jo are off-world. They crash land on Peladon. The TARDIS is lost. They need to go ask for help. The Doctor sort of decides to adopt the role of being an Earth ambassador, so stealing someone's identity and passing it off as his own, to, get into this extreme little court of alien species who are there for some peace talks. And then a whodunit murder mystery starts going on, and they got to try and figure out who's doing it. The Doctor obviously pointing the fingers at the Ice Warriors because he knows them and knows what they're like, but it actually turns out to be one of the other aliens in the crew. You're also introduced to Alpha Centauri, who I adore Alpha Centauri. Even though, yes, some people might say Alpha Centauri's voice is annoying, I personally really like the character of Alpha Centauri, and I almost wish Alpha Centauri could have been a companion for the Doctor briefly. That would have been really nice. But yeah, I love Curse of Peladon. I love the setting. The pacing is fine. I've watched Curse of Peladon so many times. I got it on the Blu-ray. I got it on DVD. I used to have it on VHS a long time ago as well. But it was such a good story for me, and almost like it's one that I go to watch if I'm feeling down or feeling ill. I'll put on the Curse of Peladon and know I'm going to have a good time. So it's more of a personal one for me. I understand if you're not a big fan of Curse of Peladon, though. The Sea Devils. I also really like the Sea Devils. I think the Sea Devils is also a great story. Like the Silurians, it is basically the Silurians part 2. It is the Silurians of the sea, basically. So whereas the Silurians were there before humans and want the land back, the Sea Devils are sort of the same, but for the sea, basically, the water. They're sick and tired of, things going on in the water. They want to expand the water mass. They want people to stop dumping things in the water or crashing their waters. It's the same thing. The Master is also back in this episode as well. He's had a couple of episodes gap after being taken in at the end of the Daemons. The Doctor goes to visit him. You get one of the best scenes in the Jon Pertwee era where he has a massive sword fight with the Master, and he's eating a sandwich halfway through, and the Master's like, I hope you enjoy your last meal, Doctor. The Master is insane in this story, because obviously he's pretending to be a prisoner, but actually he secretly is controlling everything that's going on. And he's watching like old kids' TV shows on the screen. It's funny. They do tease that and do a reference to that in New Who with John Sim, but it's hilarious here. The Sea Devil design is brilliant. Love the design of it. Like the netting as well. Really good. The gun in their hand as well. Love all that. Their voices. The screeches as well. I think it's all done fantastic. It is a really fun story, and I'd highly recommend checking out the Sea Devils. The Mutants. We had to eventually get a story that's going to go bottom of the barrel. And yeah, the Mutants is definitely bottom of the barrel, if I'm being honest. I hate the Mutants. It is the story of the whole Jon Pertwee era that I have watched the least. Mainly because I can't stomach watching it. I've watched it 3 times, and that is 3 times almost too many. It is such a shame, because I think the mutts, or the mutant-looking creatures, look amazing, and the atmosphere in the story is really good. It's just a shame that the plot and the actual substance of the story itself is so dull, and I just hate it. They made the contents, in terms of the plot and stuff, match the atmosphere. It's like, no, don't make it dull and boring. And it is such a drag to get through. Not a fan of it. And all the side characters are just annoying. Not a fan of it at all. I definitely skip the Mutants. Some people may like it, and good on you if you like it. I just can't connect with it, sorry. It's just not for me. The Time Monster is also then going here. Yeah, originally that probably would have also gone in line with the Mutants, but upon rewatch, I think if I had to really be honest, I can't quite put the Time Monster on the same level as the Mutants, because there is some things about the Time Monster that I do like, mainly Roger Delgado. Roger Delgado, if it wasn't for him, I think this story would also be down there, because he is insane again, he's hilarious. His disguise as a professor in this like university campus, using this crystal of Kronos, to try and summon Kronos and find the lost city of Atlantis and all this. It sounds bizarre, using something known as Tom Tit. Why would you call anything that? That is just asking, for us fans to like rip that apart. Benton becoming a baby, the Doctor building a weird contraption out of like teacups and saucers and God knows what other random equipment. It's just the most insane and bizarre story of all time. And it's those little bits that save it from being bottom of the barrel, because you just don't know what's going to happen next. But yeah, it is a bad story, if I'm being honest. It's not the best. The Three Doctors. The Three Doctors is going to go right up here. Come on, The Three Doctors is an amazing story. It's fantastic. I can't deny it. The 10th anniversary story. You bring back William Hartnell. You bring back Patrick Troughton. You collide them together with Jon Pertwee. You introduce a new Time Lord known as Omega, which, putting reality war to one side, that wasn't Omega. That wasn't Omega. Ignore that. This is Omega. Omega here is the best. Okay? He's at his best here. Ignore reality war. But to take on Omega, I think is done really, really well. The relationship between Patrick Troughton and Jon Pertwee is top class. They are hilarious together. They do not get on, but they are forced to get on. I love their interactions. I love William Hartnell actually came back. Obviously, not in as big a capacity that I know fans would have wanted at the time. They would have wanted him to be actually physically standing with Patrick Troughton and Jon Pertwee interacting like that, but could only do it via a screen, because you got to remember his health was still not the best back then, you know, with everything that went on. So it was just nice to see him again in some capacity. So to see them interact, the whole history of Doctor Who before you, it was really good. Joe was great. The Brigadier was great. I loved that the Brigadier didn't believe that John and Patrick could interact at the same time. He believed that John had regenerated back into Patrick Troughton. Thought that was hilarious. You know, Omega was brilliant. It was just fantastic. Visually, the story's not the best, but in terms of plot, content, everything you could want as a Doctor Who fan. Brilliant story. Love it. Carnival of Monsters. I think Carnival of Monsters, this is more of a personal one for me, because I know that a lot of people are also a bit up in arms on Carnival of Monsters. I quite like Carnival of Monsters. You know, the Doctor and Joe shrunk down, stuck inside this little machine which has different environments. It's like almost like a visual circus where this guy runs in order to make a business, you know, show people like, oh, this is where Drashigs are, this is where so-and-so species are, this is where humans are, you know, and you can see little snippets from their time, and the Doctor's got to try and work out what's going on, how to get out the machine, how to save the creatures that he's got trapped in there. You get your only little appearance of a Cyberman very briefly in the Jon Pertwee era, as that's like got a visual image on the screen, obviously trapped inside the machine as well. I think the Drashigs are a really interesting design. But yeah, I have a fun time with Carnival Monsters because I like that concept, and it's done really, really well. So that's more of a personal one for me. Frontier in Space. For me, Frontier in Space is tough because I want to put it here, but I also want to put it here. I'm gonna be harsh on it, and I'm actually gonna put it mid. That will probably annoy some people. That will probably annoy some people. The thing is, I watched Frontier in Space in the last couple of months, and it was fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, it was a fun story to watch. But it's got the same problem that Ambassadors of Death has. The Doctor and Joe get captured and escape 5 or 6 times, maybe. They even make the joke in the story where the Doctor and Joe are taken back to their cell, and they do a joke. Can't remember who says it, but one of them says like "home sweet home" or "back again." You know, when the story's aware of it, then there's something wrong. You know, I love Roger Delgado, love him, brilliant. You know, it was his final time as the Master, and he does a great job. Nice to see the Ogrons back, love that. The Master teaming up with the Daleks at the end was really nice little touch, and I like how it continues on into the next story. It's just, you know, it's just not got enough to fill the 6 parts. You know, to have this, like, it's all about this, like, war that's going on between the Draconians and the humans, you know. One side's pitted against the other because the Master has done some trickery and pretending that one side has attacked the other when really that's not the case, you know. So it's a misunderstanding, so to speak, and the Doctor's got to try and figure out what's going on. Nice concept, just the execution wasn't done very well. Planet of the Daleks. This is, again, another personal preference one for me. I like Planet of the Daleks. It is my favourite Dalek story of Jon Pertwee's era. I did say that each of the Dalek stories will be in a different category. It's a 6-part story taken on the planet Spyrodon. It's got a concept that if they had continued with it, the Daleks would have literally been unstoppable. It's all about the Daleks travelling to Spyrodon, trying to steal the power of the Spyrodons, you know, because the Spyrodons people have the ability to turn invisible, and the Daleks want to try and get the ability to turn invisible, because obviously then that would, you know, cause them to win most wars if they were able to be invisible and still be the Daleks, you know. The Doctor at the end of the previous story is hurt and is infected and is needing to heal. Jo goes out on her own to start with, gets infected herself. When the Doctor recovers, he has to try and save Jo. You know, I love it. And I also love, like, the, what do you want to call him? Like, the Supreme Dalek that comes down, this gold and black Dalek variant, which looks like it's taken straight from the Peter Cushing movies. You know, it literally, I believe it might have been even. But yeah, like it's taken straight from the Peter Cushing Dalek movies and popped into Doctor Who. Looks fantastic and brilliant. Love it. But yeah, and I love the forest setting, and I love the chase through the corridors that the Doctor has with the Daleks, the flying up the chute. Gives you vibes of the Daleks, the original one, because they do references to the Daleks in this story. And this is also the story where my favourite quote of Jon Pertwee comes in. The courage isn't just a matter of not being frightened, that quote. The Green Death. Now, I should have said before doing this Jon Pertwee video that my opinion on Jon Pertwee stories is vastly different to most people's opinions, for the most part. Like, I hate stories that people love, and I love stories that people hate. I should have mentioned that at the start, because the Green Death for me, I know this one's going to hurt people. This is where the Green Death is going. I know people are gonna freaking out that I'm putting the Green Death on like the same level as Day of the Daleks. Because Green Death is seen as like where it should be, like at minimum here. Look, I get it. Joe is fantastic in this story. You know, the premise is really good. You know, the villain, stupid but fun to a degree. You know, it's just something about it doesn't click with me. I don't know what it is, but every time I watch it, it just drags for me, and I just can't. I love Joe's departure. It's really sweet, really nice. The maggots are actually really cool to look at. But there's just nothing there for me. I don't know what it is, but I just cannot connect with the Green Death. And I really want to, and I'm hoping I will do another rewatch of the Green Death, and I will be able to change my opinions on it. And if I do, I will do another video on it. But as it stands, I can't put the Green Death, for me, above mid-tier. So, and I know, and I'm sorry, and I'm not doing it to annoy people. It's just genuinely how I feel. But yeah, it's not a bad story. Look, listen that here now. It is not a bad story. But it is, for me anyway, I think it's just mid, you know? I know, I feel like I've just said something really slanderous there, but it's just how I feel. The Time Warrior. Anyone who knows me, you know my opinions on the Time Warrior. You know I absolutely adore the Time Warrior for multiple reasons. Obviously, this is the first story to introduce the Sontarans. It's the first story to introduce Sarah Jane Smith. You know, Elizabeth Sladen. Fantastic. Amazing. Her interactions with Jon Pertwee are amazing. I adore it. She's on top form. It's really good. Just the quiet, you know, it's a semi-historical, a pseudo-historical, as they call it, story. One Sontaran, Commander Lynx, you know, stuck in the past, you know, and he's weaponizing people from the past in order to repair his ship, you know. And that's basically, it's a very basic premise. He's also stealing, using this little time corridor to steal scientists from the future to bring him parts to help fix his ship because he can't move his ship. But he's got enough power to steal scientists. So he steals scientists from the future to bring him the parts, use their intelligence to help repair his ship. All the while, he's teamed up with Lord Irongron and weaponizing his people in return for him to be allowed to keep his ship and have a lab in his castle. Sarah Jane tags along while the Doctor tries to solve the mystery of the missing scientists, and they end up interacting. Fantastic story, basic premise, but I adore it. You hear the word Gallifrey for the first time. You finally realise where the Doctor's from. This story does a lot for Doctor Who lore and the future of the show, and I think it is really good. Invasion of the Dinosaurs, for me, is mid. I want to like it. Like, I want to like it a lot, but I just personally, I can't, you know? Look, I'm not one to criticise Doctor Who based on their visuals. The only time I've ever done that really is in my previous video on Underworld, but can you blame me? The visuals obviously of the dinosaur. When this collection box set comes out, the dinosaurs need to be, this story needs the treatment the most. Because the dinosaurs, but I think that gives it a bit of charm. The dinosaurs sometimes look okay, other times they look horrendous. In particular, when the Doctor's trapped in a cupboard and he's trying to hit a pterodactyl with a mop or a broom, and you can see even the strings of the pterodactyl going in his face, and it's like, oh my goodness. It's also too long. I'm not a huge fan of it. The Doctor and Unit also clash a lot. You've got Mike Yates, who, after being not infected, like sort of possessed, or his brain's gone all mixed up from the events of Green Death. He's sort of out to get the Doctor in this story. So sort of betrays the Doctor, pretends that the Doctor's the one who's causing all the problems. The Brigadier briefly believes Yates, so there's a clash in unit. It's all right. There's also then a subplot where there's humans who have been locked away somewhere. They've been told that the world is like a dangerous place, radioactive. They're not ready to return yet. And Sarah gets taken there and has to convince them otherwise. A bit like Enemy of the World, where Salamander had the hive of people underneath saying that the world's gone to crap up there and you can't go up there yet, but really it's not anywhere near as bad. It's another one of those style of stories. It's just, I think it's just a mixture of the effects, the randomness of just Yates turning on the Doctor. I'm just not a huge fan of it. It's okay, though. It's a bit of fun. The dinosaurs make it fun. Like I said, the effects also make it fun. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. Death of the Daleks then is going down here. Yeah, Death of the Daleks is the weakest of the Dalek stories for Jon Pertwee's era. Interesting concept, that the Daleks have to work with the Doctor because they've landed on a planet where the power sources are going haywire, and so they can't use their weaponry. I think that's interesting, and so you've got but they should have done that for the whole story. They only do it for an episode. The Daleks are very quick in order to get their weapons back online. Exelon, interesting planet, interesting people. I like the chase at the end in the big tower where they're trying to get to the centre. But it's got like one of the most random cliffhangers ever, where the Doctor looks at the ground and there's just like a little checkerboard on the floor, and he's just like, "Stop, don't move," to Belial, this little creature that he's travelling with. He's like, "Stop, don't move," and then it just cuts to the credits, and it's like, wait, what? It's really weird. You've got a Dalek that randomly just commits suicide because a prisoner has escaped. I'm sorry, but I feel like the Daleks would just go after them. He discovers his prisoner's gone away, and rather than go and locate them, he just goes, "I'm going to kill myself, I suppose." It's like very bizarre. Don't really get why they do that. It is what it is. It's one of them stories, really, if I'm being honest. It's not one that I've gone back to rewatch very often. And the design of the Daleks, I don't know whether I like it or not. I'm like that. Do I like the design of the Daleks or not? The silvery black nature of it. The silver, I don't know. I'm really not sure. But yeah, it is what it is. Then we've got the Monster of Peladon, which for me, again, my opinions on the Peladon stories. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, that one needs to be right at the bottom, because I know people hate Monster of Peladon a lot more than Curse. I don't really know why. But this one obviously is a sequel to The Curse of Peladon. The Doctor goes back to Peladon years later to see King Peladon, but he's travelled into the future, so it's all about his daughter. The Ice Warriors are now the villains again. So it is your generic Ice Warrior story. It's a bit of fun. I like it. I like Peladon as a setting. You got Alpha Centauri back. It is good. You got Agador back. Love Agador. It's great. It's a fun story for me anyway. And then you've got Planet of the Spiders, which, also for me, I really like Planet of the Spiders. I think Planet of Spiders is a really good end to Jon Pertwee. I think the only thing missing, but there was obvious reasons, is the Master. The Master would have sealed this off with a chef's kiss, would have been perfect. And that was their original plan. But obviously after the sad passing of Roger Delgado, they had to change course. So you've got the Spiders. And they teased Metebelis Free and the crystal that the Doctor took in the Green Death. Where the Joe has sent back the crystal that he gave as a wedding present to Joe to the Doctor, and the Spiders are after that crystal. They want it back because the Doctor took it from them. It's all about the Doctor facing his fears, and it's done really, really well. You've got everything from the Jon Pertwee in this. He gets one massive chase in either part 2 or 3, where most of it is just a chase where he uses every vehicle under the sun. All the vehicles are used, like Bessie, the Who-mobile, He goes on a speedboat. He does everything. Shows his action. He fights so many people. Jon Pertwee gets to do the checklist of everything that he's done in his era, and they send him off in one of the best ways possible. He's one of the few Doctors to actually die before regenerating. He collapses out the TARDIS and he doesn't make it. Sarah closes his eyes. He has his last line, a tear, Sarah Jane. No, don't cry while there's life, there's. And I think he was supposed to say there's hope. But it's beautiful. Beautiful speech. And watching the regeneration was really quick, really short and sweet, but it was done in a fantastic way. Really does Jon Pertwee justice. I love Planet of the Spiders, and I think it's a great, fantastic story. But that is going to be my tier list ranking every third Doctor story. I already know this is going to be a bit of a divisive one, to say the least. And this is the tier list in particular that I was most worried about doing, because I know my thoughts on the Jon Pertwee era are quite different to how other people see the Jon Pertwee era. But yeah, I'm interested to see, but can we keep it respectful? But yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts on the Jon Pertwee era. Now that we have done the Jon Pertwee era, we've only got 2 more videos to go in this series. So next time, we'll be tackling the second Doctor's era, played by Patrick Troughton. Bye for now, everyone.